Yes, guys, welcome back to another Lily White Lounge. We're joined by a very special guest today. We've got Wendy Coys of the Extra Inch. Really excited for this guest. Yeah, Wendy, how you doing, mate?
Doing well, yeah, bringing the average age up in this room. Very happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me on. Loving the work you guys do. So yeah, nice to be here chatting to you.
And I'm also obviously joined by Travis. Our other co-host Ollie is away in Australia currently, but we've Travis is here as kind of a lone trooper now. But yeah, we're excited to have you on, Wendy. Trying to start because obviously I've been a bit of a avid listener of the Extra Inch for maybe 3 years, I'd say. So yeah, I've looked at and listened to a lot of your stuff. Really like your kind of way of seeing the game, especially like the stuff you used to do on the youth stuff and on the fighting cock. Yeah, just kind of talk us through what your kind of journey has been like, first in supporting Spurs and then kind of creating content on Spurs.
Oh, thanks for the support. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so I grew up as a Spurs fan, had no choice. My dad was Spurs. Actually, he did have a choice. He and my uncle grew up in the 60s and they got to basically pick which teams they wanted to support because my granddad wasn't a big football fan. He liked Leeds, but he didn't really have any connection. So in the 60s, obviously Spurs were massive. They'd won the league. They won the double. And my dad picked Spurs, my uncle picked Burnley. So my dad kind of got off easy because they lived in Croydon and he had a very short journey to go and watch his team, whereas my uncle had to travel up the M1 to go and watch Burnley. Bit of a nightmare. So he did all right out of the choice. I grew up. I had a Spurs bib when I was a baby. I had no say in the matter. It was always going to be Spurs for me. And I went to primary school in the 90s at a time where Man U were just absolutely dominating everything. And essentially, all of my friends from primary school switched from being Arsenal, Watford, Spurs, a Leicester fan actually randomly, and then they just became Man U fans. And I was the only Spurs fan that saw it through and stuck with my team. So my dad was always very proud that I'd seen it out. So I grew up watching Sheringham, Anderson, Klinsmann. Lineker actually was one of my first favourites. So yeah, some great Spurs players in some pretty poor Spurs teams, and it was quite miserable during a lot of my childhood and then teens. And in terms of sort of where the content creation began, it's a bit of a long-winded story, really. I I used to post a lot on the Coys forum when I was I guess late teens, early 20s maybe. And I used to write quite long posts. I was obviously like naturally quite analytical, I guess. And I think someone on there once said to me, "Oh, you should try starting a blog and turning some of these long posts into blog articles." So I did, and I just kept going at that, and it kind of got a decent following, I would say. Blogging was much more of a thing back then. It was obviously before Twitter had taken off, so it was like one of the only ways to connect with other Spurs fans, I guess. And I used to have some quite good conversations in the comments section of my blog. And then I started a Twitter account when Twitter became a thing, and I kind of got in at the right time. And I wasn't really doing anything special, I don't think. I think I was just like everyone did, just spitting out opinions about Spurs. Um, and just built a bit of a following. In those days, all the Spurs fans used to follow each other basically. So you naturally had a core group of people who would follow you and retweet and chat amongst each other. And then because I also had an interest in going to watch the youth team and the reserve team, I think because I had a bit of a niche through that, people did start kind of latching onto that and following me because no one else was really talking about the youth team back then. So that's how my Twitter followers kind of grew and grew. And then so I followed Spooky, who is a good friend to this day. And when he and Flav started the Fighting Cock, I remember seeing Spooky tweeting about it. And I just thought, well, I can't imagine they'll have anyone who's interested in the youth team. So ping them a message and say, look, like if you're interested, I can do some youth updates for you. See if the listeners are interested in that kind of thing. And basically, I used to record these little segments for the Fighting Cock. They all joke that they sounded like they were recorded on a calculator because the sound quality was so terrible. And it was awful. When you listen back, it sounds so awful. I don't even know why people persisted with it, but um, people got into it. And Engineer Al, who devised a lot of the Fighting Cock theme music and stuff, he made an awesome theme for Wendy's halftime youth update,
Yeah, I remember
which
that.
got people involved and engaged in it, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then the Fighting Cock became quite massive. To be honest, it blew up. They've done incredibly well, and um, Bardi and I always wanted to do more tactical stuff. We did cover tactics in the Fighting Cock every now and again, but I think it was more of like an overarching thematic podcast, really. It was talking about like the bigger picture of being a Spurs fan and what it was like to be stood in the Park Lane and that kind of thing. And it's not that there wasn't space for tactics, it just wasn't what the rest of the guys really focused on. So the idea initially was that we would do some standalone pods talking about tactics, and eventually we did do that, and then it became clear that actually we're talking about the same game in slightly different ways, and it felt odd that we were just doing two separate pods about the same thing. So Flav said, right, why don't you guys just go out, do your own thing? You've got enough of a following behind you to create your own pod. And we did that, and actually it was 6 years ago this week that the Extra Inch podcast feed went live. And that time has flown by. By this point, I'd already approached Nathan, who was making some really cool little homemade YouTube videos under the guise Talking Tottenham Tactics. And I really liked what Nathan was doing. And we'd had a few chats, and I said, look, I don't know if you're interested, but I want to do this new thing. We all got on really well from the start, basically, and it just kind of grew from there. We did the first few in a studio. So we kind of got to know each other a bit, and then really during the pandemic, everyone was home based, so we lent into that and started doing recording via Skype, and that's really where we've kind of got the regularity and the consistency, and I think it works really well. We've got a really nice following. Like the community is lovely, great people. We have a Patreon now, and behind the paywall is a Discord community, which is absolutely thriving. It's a great place to talk about Spurs, unlike a lot of the Spurs social media. Yeah, I've been so thrilled with how it's gone, and just have really appreciated all the support, um, and the feedback that we get as well. Sometimes people aren't so keen, but that's fine. It's not going to be for everyone. Um, yeah, but I mean, I get to talk about Spurs every week. It's a privilege.
Yeah, that's a very like windy journey to get to where,
Yeah.
I guess that's part of how social media has kind of evolved throughout that time. And yeah, so you were watching matches, youth matches. Was that in the old training ground?
Yeah, so I did start going to the old, yeah, Chigwell, down in Chigwell, Spurs Lodge down in Chigwell. So I went to probably, I'd say, about 10 matches down there. So not too many before they moved to the new training ground.
Yeah,
Actually, maybe more than that, because I saw Harry Kane make his debut for the under 18s,
yeah,
which was quite cool. There were some great players back in the day. We had a really good youth team, and we've had some great youth teams in the time that I've been watching them. Like, to be honest, the one now is amongst the best, I would say, in terms of the overall quality of players.
yeah,
But we've had some brilliant players over the years, and it was a joy. So when the new training ground opened, I went to the first under 18 match there, which was cool. Um,
Oh wow.
and you can just turn up. You can turn up,
yeah.
and you might get asked who you are and why you're there. And as long as you're kind of confident about it and just say, I'm here to watch the U team, you'll get in. It's fine. Like there's no issues. It's just parking is a bit of a challenge. So they don't really advertise the fact that you could turn up.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because we've actually got a ex academy player coming on next in a couple weeks, who was sort of in the age group with Winks, Kane,
Nice.
I know that they're in between, but we'll reveal
Mm,
that later on who we're having on. Um,
nice.
we've also just talking about the academy. We've had a video go up today on the current top five in our view academy players. Um, so go and watch that if you want to see that. But yeah, we'll kind of go on to I guess current Spurs and Wendy, I'll get your thoughts and then Travis get your thoughts a bit looking forward. But Wendy, how have you felt after kind of the injury crisis and the kind of Son and Basuma and Saar going away? How have you felt we've coped with that in the last couple of weeks, and kind of how do you see us coping for the next few weeks?
I've been really kind of pleasantly surprised, to be honest, with how well we've done. It feels like obviously you had an amazing start to the season and couldn't have been happier with the start. And I knew that that wouldn't last forever. I knew that we wouldn't just keep rolling teams over. There was going to be some challenges along the way, but then it felt like all the challenges came at once, and it sort of felt unfair, didn't it? That like, why is this happening to us now when everything's going so well? Like, why can't we just have nice things once in a while? But actually, it took a while, but I felt like it's clicked, and even with obviously weaker players playing, we're still playing Angeball as it's meant to be. We're like there's a level of purity about the tactical approach, and it feels like they kind of get it now. And we've ground out some results. We've had a little bit of luck along the way, but on the whole, I think we've done really well. And I think Richarlison coming back from injury has been massive. Like his performances have been incredible. I think he's so underrated amongst the Spurs fan base. His the work he does off the ball is incredible, but actually he's now outperforming his XG as well. So he's finishing well. Um, I think for the next few weeks, Madison being back is massive. I'm very excited to see what Madison can do with Werner and Johnson, and maybe with Kulusevski playing this new role. Like, do they go super experimental and play a really crazy midfield three? There's a lot to be excited about, and obviously having the centre backs back fit is huge as well.
So we'll touch on that midfield three because I think people have definitely been talking about that, and it's an exciting prospect. But let me just go back to Richarlison quickly because I think he's been very underrated, and I don't think necessarily he's extremely top as a striker in terms of overall ability, but I think what he is a very suited profile to what is required of him in this system, which is, as we've kind of said, continuous runs in behind, stretching the back four, kind of pulling centre backs away so that the kind of advanced midfielders get more space, more time to pick up passes, and then obviously out of possession, he's the leading player in the press, so that's also vital. Travis, what are your kind of thoughts on, I guess, Richarlison in terms of his strengths and what kind of, regardless of his performances, what kind of weaknesses do you see in his game to the current role? Is there anything kind of that's missing from his game for an Ange kind of number nine?
Yeah, I think as Wendy said, him coming back from injury has been hugely crucial for us because it's not just giving us that striker presence that we need, but it's someone who's playing on form and they look confident in their ability, which is something that Richarlison, as far as I can remember at Spurs at least, has never had, and he's never had that conviction in himself to take the chances he's getting. We've got a short video coming out soon on his return since injury, and that some of the stats that he's putting up in comparison, his shots are up compared to his first game back for which was West Ham. His shots are up, his shots on target are up, his goals are up, and his XG is up, and he's overperforming the XG now. So everything is pointing to the fact that he's not only in very good form, but he's becoming more adept at playing the striker role in Ange's system. And I think that's something we haven't experienced as of yet in terms of the crucialness of an Ange striker. He makes sure that everyone's sort of linked together. He's the focal point that pushes the centre backs back, creates space for others. And it's not what's interesting is we're so used to having Harry Kane up front and having the striker being the main man who scores all the goals, who provides all the goals, and he's just intrinsic in every facet of play. And a striker, sorry, the pigeons just come up on screen. It makes me laugh every time. Um, Andrew's striker isn't necessarily like that. They're more of a decoy, if anything. And then when it gets to that final point, they're there to take the chances. And I think that's what Richarlison thrives at when he is confident, because he's not the best at linking up play, although he has been doing that very well in recent weeks. He's better to get on the end of scrappy chances, be in and around the box, be a nuisance to the defenders, and create space for others, which is exactly what this side needs right now.
Yeah, and I think it's a weird one because when I first came across Richarlison was at Watford. Obviously, he went to Watford from I think Fluminense, I think, in Brazil, and he came as a sort of winger, like a dribble heavy winger who was kind of tall but quite slim, quite agile. Could definitely take on players in 1v1s, and then he kind of, I guess, built his body up, became more of like a focal point at Everton. Obviously, I think the style of Everton required him to be a bit more of that kind of player. But yeah, he became more of like a kind of a scrappy, in kind of good terms, striker who would kind of fight in and around the box, create yards of space through kind of holding off defenders and not giving up on any ball kind of thing. And I think that's where his goals have been coming from, is kind of in the box from crosses or cutbacks. I think he's a very good first time finisher. He can strike off his left and right. I think when like off a cutback, or obviously in the air, he's very strong. I think where he struggles is being played through kind of on goal and having to, I guess, create a yard for himself and get a shot off, which prime Kane was unbelievable. I can remember some of his goals where he's sort of 1v1 with a centre back and he just shifts it onto his right and just strikes it bottom corner. And I guess Richarlison, when he does get a yard, he always looks off balance kind of thing. I think there was one against United where he was sort of on the left side of the penalty area, cut in and tried to like bend it far corner and kind of didn't catch it properly. And that's my kind of, I guess, weakness with him. He can't, I guess, create goals for himself, in my eyes.
I think.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, he also struggles with time. I think that's when he has time, he struggles, and he's best in the scenarios where he can quickly get a shot away. I think I saw John McKenzie say something on Twitter. He's an analyst for Tifo. He does really good stuff. He posted something, or he said something. He's been doing research on first time shots, and that Richarlison is really high up for the percentage of his shots at the first time. And thinking about it makes so much sense. I'm pretty sure all of his goals this season, maybe bar one or two, have been first time shots. And I think that points to what you were saying, in that he struggles to create a chance for himself and he's better at taking it first time.
Yeah, and Wendy, I guess I want to get your thoughts on whether, for me, that's like sort of that type of profile in a striker with kind of everything that Richarlison has, alongside those weaknesses not being there, is a sort of over £100 million player. And I don't think we're there in the Ange stage of Ange evolution kind of thing, where we're looking to kind of take that next step to being a kind of regular Premier League title challenger, regular Champions League title challenger. And I think that's sort of a problem for later down the line. Because I've seen, obviously, people say Richarlison should be sold now, and I guess that's fine, but there's only fine if they're going to go and drop, say, over 100 million on a Osimhen or whoever, I don't know, Vlahovic or one of those kind of guys. So yeah, what are your thoughts on kind of Richarlison's mid to long term future at Spurs?
We had this exact conversation on the Extra Inch, actually. I can't remember if it was this week or last week, but it kind of blows my mind that people are up for selling Richarlison, because I think you're right. He's the perfect profile for the system. He might not be the perfect striker, but if he had like the composure of like an elite striker and the ball mastery of an elite striker, like he's not a player that plays for Spurs. It's Harry Kane essentially, but even with Kane, you don't get the pressing. You don't have the same level of intensity that Richarlison has. So you're still losing something. I just don't think this the striker that everyone wants exists. So we unfortunately he's followed Harry Kane, so he gets judged against what Harry Kane achieved, and that is an almost impossible comparison for him.
I
But I
guess
think you
people
have
would
to look
say
at what
though,
he does.
yeah, I guess to refute that, I think what people would say is that you pay premium for those abilities such as ball mastery and finishing, and you don't pay premium for stuff like pressing and running in behind. So what would you kind of say to that?
Yeah, I think people say, this is the bare minimum you should expect to play a striker who can press, but like Kane can't press like Richarlison did, and Kane's probably one of the greatest strikers there's ever been. So I think those skill sets are underrated. The thing is, I agree completely that Richarlison can't create goals for himself, but I think the way he is, the kind of nuisance factor, creates goals for other players. And in the system, it certainly creates goals for other players. How many times have we seen Richarlison pressing, which has led to a loose ball that gets pounced on, and suddenly Spurs are creating a chance? And I do think the fact that he's so versatile is a real help in the system as well, and especially next year if we're in two competitions, the ability for him to play up front or on the left is really quite vital. When he was at Everton, obviously he started off on the left, and then Calvert-Lewin got injured, and he played a lot through the middle, and that's really helped him develop his all-round game, I think. Um, and he'll probably carry on improving under Ange, because Ange is such a good coach. He'll kind of learn more and more about what Ange wants from him in that central striker role in this system. So I think there's more to come. But honestly, I think he's a fantastic fit. I think he's a really good player. He's clearly a really good character as well. He's a decent human being, and I'm very happy to have him in the squad for as long as possible, really.
Yeah, and I think that goes underrated. I think his character is something that Ange obviously loves about whoever. That's kind of so big for Ange. But also, I think Richarlison's character, especially some of the stuff he does outside of football, is not actually talked about that much. But he does a lot of kind of charity work, and obviously that's not linked to on the pitch stuff. But I think stuff like that is just testament to his character.
Mhm.
And I think in terms of what we were saying is that pressing is the bare minimum. I think that's fine, and there's strikers who will press, but it's not about just pressing kind of to an average level. It's a relentlessness, and you can't really teach that. You can't really. That's either in a player or it's not. And
Yeah.
it's not just the physical relentlessness. It's the mental relentlessness of always wanting to run, always being first to kind of think, okay, I'm running, I'm always pressing. And I think even like if you think about if you've ever played football or whatever, normal people don't think like that. You're never like first to gamble on the keeper when he spills it or whatever. And Richarlison's that kind of player who will take those risks because it's just in him. So I think those kind of things, they're harder to kind of put a value on and see value in, but they are definitely as valuable as some of the other kind of attributes people look for.
I think that's a really interesting point, because that's sort of what Ange is looking for in the signings we've made. They're all people are saying like Dragossin's not that proficient on the ball, and his athletic abilities are more of the standout, and same with Brennan Johnson and Werner, and it's their attitude more than their technical ability. Conor Gallagher's a prime example. And I think that's what he's looking for. That's what he's willing to pay the price for, is those intangibles, the ability to cover the space in behind for Dragossin and Van der Ven, more so than the ability to progress the ball with their passing or carrying. The ability to press well and cover all areas of the field in a number 8 like Conor Gallagher, than someone who has the ball mastery and can dictate play and things like that. So it's evident that that's what he's looking for, at least at the ground level of this team, and as we build up.
I think in the future, that's the point. I think it's about building the foundations of a squad, and the way he wants to build I think you're right. I think he completely wants to kind of shape the squad from the ground up. And I think what his starting point is, okay, let me get athleticism and let me get kind of strong mental characters. And I think if you build your squad around that and then sprinkle on kind of the elite 1v1 player or the elite creator, which we already have in Madison, or yeah, I guess sprinkle on those kind of X factor players. And then if everyone else around them is elite athletically and elite mentally, then you've got the makings of a not only strong team on the pitch, but a strong kind of core group of people to go all the way every season kind of thing. I think Klopp is probably a big kind of, I don't know if Andrew's been inspired by Klopp's teams or whatever, but I think he's another kind of person who values that a lot. And you've seen kind of where that's taken Liverpool. I didn't have Liverpool anywhere near the title this season.
He already copies Pep. He can't copy Klopp as well.
No, not copy, but
can't do both.
You know what I mean. But in terms of like Liverpool, I didn't see them ever being near the title this season. I think the reason they just grind out win after win is because of what Klopp's instilled over there. And I think Andrew will kind of do similar at Spurs. And I think that's what we've seen in this injury crisis is the ability to, when the going gets tough, still grind out results. And there's been some games this season where we haven't played very well and we've got over the line. So yeah, I think that's kind of where Andrew's looking in that sense. And I think that can be frustrating at times because people see, I don't know, 50 million for Brennan Johnson and might think that's an overpay. But I think he's so smart in the way he's building his squad that he knows how much those kind of factors we don't see actually are valued to the squad. So yeah, I think that's definitely what he's kind of trying to do. But yeah, let's move on to the City game tomorrow, which is a big one. I think Ange definitely won't make the mistake he did against Fulham early in the season, where we knocked out of the Carabao. Is it Carabao now? And yeah, I think the fact that it's City kind of means that he won't really be able to rotate, and the fact we've had a week off, I think he's definitely going to go as strong as he can. Wendy, what are your thoughts on, first, let's get your thoughts on City at the moment, and then kind of what you not think will happen, but how you see the game kind of going.
City just continually reinvent themselves under Guardiola, and I'm just always staggered by the way he takes them on another level each year. It's insane, and they've adapted really well to playing without Haaland. I think it kind of, obviously Haaland is an incredible player, but in some ways he does make them quite one-dimensional in a good way and a bad way. Like, they're one-dimensional in the fact that they pass the ball to Haaland and he scores goals. That's good, but it's kind of in some ways easier to defend against, whereas now they've just got all these incredible forwards buzzing around, dropping in and out of positions, finding pockets. You don't know where they're going to be at any stage. Alvarez likes to come deep and receive the ball to feet. When you've got Bernardo and Foden and Doku just drifting around. I mean, Bernardo's popping up all over the place. He's essentially playing free roll as a 10 and coming and taking the balls off at the centre back. It's insane. And they were obviously, last year they were playing a lot of inverted fullback. So we saw a lot of Stones in midfield. We saw a lot of Stones at right back. This year they're playing more kind of traditional build up with two centre backs and then Rodri splitting them or coming and taking the ball off them just ahead of them. So he's just constantly reinventing them, and it's really hard to predict how they're going to play. I think I watched the Newcastle game. I'm pretty sure, I've got terrible memory, it was a couple of weeks ago now, but I'm pretty sure Foden played like as the right-sided 10 in that game, and Doku on the left. And then Foden's in some games been playing kind of as part of the midfield three. So they're mixing up from week to week, and so they're really hard to predict and plan for. Yeah, I think obviously that they can't win at the new Spurs stadium. So there's that's hanging over them. I do think that will be kind of slightly eating into them a bit. I think it'll kind of play on their minds, and I don't know. I'm not scared. I'm not scared of them. They could win easily, but at the same time, so can we. We can go toe to toe with them. I mean, we know Ange will be brave. We know that he'll ask the players to play out from the back and try and create overloads, as Pep will try and create overloads. It's kind of a bit of a game of chicken, really, and we'll see who comes out on top.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there with City. I think the Haaland thing is, of course, he's ridiculous in the box, but with kind of Alvarez, you get something different. You get him dropping deep, people running beyond him. I'd still probably opt for that over Haaland, probably, because I just think he's ridiculous in around the box.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get something different to deal with. And I think it's an interesting point about the fullbacks and how they're kind of being put as traditional fullbacks now. I guess traditional fullbacks, but like a long time ago, just kind of fullbacks who just guard their flank and are all about winning their 1v1 duel. And I think I actually think that matches up to us kind of well. And why I say that is because I think sometimes what I notice in the game is obviously that we're missing a 1v1 player and a player who can kind of beat their fullback relentlessly and keep running at their fullback. But I actually think Walker and Ake, if Ake plays, I don't know if it'll be Ake or Guardiola, but they're two of the best 1v1 defenders. And I think any player who's a dribbly kind of winger will struggle against them. But I think where they actually can be got at is pure athleticism. And I know Walker and Ake are very quick, but getting them on the turn, not letting them kind of settle and be able to kind of jockey and whatever. Because I think when they're in a settled kind of stance, I think they're very strong. But obviously we can get them turning, and with their high line they play, Werner and Johnson are as quick as both of them. So I think that matches up to us quite well. I think we were gonna leave this till the end, but I think we should do it now as kind of talk through the lineup, and then we can talk more about the game itself. So, Andrew, if our producer Andrew's got a lineup kind of.
Let me get this set up. Very excited.
Oh, and you get it up. So I think we'll go through kind of what. I guess we'll do a little vote on each position, and see what we kind of think on. Yeah, who's going to play where? So obviously we'll have Vicario in goal. We might as well just put that down.
It's a cup run. Forster.
Nah, no.
He's got to get cup games.
I swear.
No, I'm joking. Vicario.
I'm sure they'll probably. Oh no, Edison's injured anyway. So
I think they do for the cup.
Anyway, but I think Edison's injured anyway. So, oh, you got pictures. That's nice.
Of course, man. I'm prepared.
Okay, nice. Let's go to. I mean, the right back. I guess we're all on Porro.
Pedro Porro, the goat, bro.
Two centre backs. Again, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I'd say Romero and Van Dijk. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah. I think the real conversation here is the midfield.
Yeah. So just do the usual back four.
Yeah.
The usual back four.
Let me see. Van de Ven.
Yeah, I mean, this is the real topic of conversation here. It's what sort of midfield three he's going to go for. I think
let's do pretty.
We sort of have to
predict what
decide upon
what you want to do. So obviously,
yeah.
So what? I'll start with you, Travis. Who do you think is going to be in the midfield three?
Who do I think is going to be? I think Maddison will start. I think the trend that we've seen with other players returning from injury indicates that he will just start them. And especially we've got Brentford on Wednesday, so I think he'll rest him for that, if anything. So I think Maddison will start, and then it comes down to whether he's going to go full throttle or he's going to be a bit more reserved. So I think Bentancur's definitely in there at the base. And then it's between.
Bentancur might not be at the base if Højbjerg.
Højbjerg could. I don't think, considering it will be between, in my opinion, it will be between Skip and Kulusevski, and Højbjerg, essentially. And I just can't see him going with Højbjerg. I think the trend that he's taken so far this season, he wants to slowly sort of push Højbjerg aside and not use him where he can. So I think, and with that being said, I can just see him going with Kulusevski and Maddison in midfield.
I agree.
because I think he'll also want Brennan and Werner on either side,
I agree.
and Kulusevski doesn't necessarily suit the way that he'll want to get at the wing backs and run in behind.
I think it's a weird one because I think also Kulusevski's defensive work goes, because he's a right winger. I think his defensive work goes underappreciated, and like, it gets brushed on the carpet. And I think people think that's a crazy midfield. I think Kulusevski can play number 8. I think he's got the physicality, he's got the tactical kind of IQ, and he works his socks off. So I don't see that as like very hugely risky. Of course, they're attack-minded players, so they're gonna gamble and they're gonna kind of try and create things, which obviously is probably more risky than, say, a risk-averse Skip or whatever. But there's also obviously risks in playing safer passes as well, because you kind of invite a press and whatever. Chris, what are your thoughts on that midfield three, and how that will play out?
It's so difficult, isn't it? Because you can see a reason for each option. I think Kulusevski gives you better ball retention, so I think that's the plus point for him. I think the point one of you made earlier, I can't remember which one of you it was, but the idea of Johnson and Werner running in behind is a really exciting one, and for that reason, I would go Højbjerg, because he's probably got the best range of passing aside from Maddison. But I'd want Højbjerg at the base for sure, because I don't trust him as the 8. He hasn't got the ability to play 8. So like my personal preference would probably be Højbjerg, actually. I didn't think I'd say that. But I do like the full sicko midfield of Maddison, Bentancur, Kulusevski. I think it'd be really fun. I don't want Skip to play. I really do not want to see Oliver Skip. And I think he will play. I think Ange will go with Skip.
Who do you think he would be in there for instead of? Would you think Maddison?
Probably instead of Johnson, actually, and Kulusevski right wing.
Yeah.
I think that's what he'll do, and I don't want to see that, but I think it's.
I think he'll go with. Personally, I think he'll go with this, but I think he could easily do it. I think Skip he clearly really likes Skip. I don't know whether that's like an off-pitch thing or kind of he understands this. I think he does probably. He seems like a very tactically astute player, but I think where he lacks is physically. I don't know what's happened to his body, because he wasn't this immobile before. Well, not that I remember. I remember him being quite active and getting around the pitch pretty efficiently. I think probably injuries might have harmed him there. I'd predict that he'd go this 3 and Johnson, Werner, and Richarlison, but I think it's a difficult one. I think Højbjerg, I agree, he should play the 6. Højbjerg in the 6 worries me a little bit because of Man's press, and that goal that we conceded where Bissouma lost the ball. I can see Højbjerg being at risk of that kind of.
What I will say about that is Højbjerg changed the game against Man City.
Oh no, he did
first time out.
No, but Højbjerg changes game halves. Højbjerg has always come off the bench.
Yeah, true.
Half, but he's never.
But I think
well this season.
What changed? Yeah, sorry, Andrew. Sorry.
Not necessarily.
I think what changed the game that time was the second half. But I think if we started like that, it would have been good as well. Because what was so crucial was him coming back and supporting Bissouma to make it a 2 in midfield rather than the single pivot.
Yeah,
and I
100%.
think he did that with Bentancur really well last time. I can't remember who it was against. I think United. He did that really well with Bentancur.
That's an argument against playing Kulusevski as well, because I don't think Kulusevski could play in a pivot. I think that would be asking too much of him. So if you want the option to go 4-2-3-1, then you have to play Skip or Højbjerg, I think.
And I think the way City press is very narrow. That's what they did last time. They pressed very narrow. The inverted fullbacks couldn't receive it, and having an extra body in there sort of freed up at least one of those midfielders or fullbacks. The thing that I really want to see, which I feel like we're never ever going to see, is that with Bissouma and Bentancur coming deep and picking it up off the back four, because I think that against the high press, Bentancur and Bissouma receiving it in like a double pivot kind of it escapes the press almost every time in my eyes. I think they're 2 of the most press resistant midfielders in the league, and I think that's what Ange has in mind. You know when he was speaking on that he had big plans for those 2 to play together. I think that's a kind of scary prospect, and one that I can't wait to see. And these are the kind of games I think that really would work in. Less so the kind of games against lower opposition where they're not as pressed, and they're going to need to be able to spray passes more often. But this kind of game where it's going to be tight, they're not going to have much time on the ball. That's where they thrive. Obviously, Basuma's not here, so we're not going to have that. But Kulusevski's press resistant, but in a different way.
But
so yeah, let's go with the front three, Andrew, of Johnson.
So are we staying with this midfield though? Because I'm not sure.
Travis,
I'm not sure Kulusevski
Travis?
starts there because it's too
What do you
different.
think,
Okay.
Travis? Yeah, go on.
Yeah, sorry, go on, Kish.
I was going to say, what do you think? Because me and Chris obviously are 50-50 with what so we'll leave it to.
I can't see Skip playing. I think whether or not it's my thoughts on what I want biasing me, essentially, I'm not sure. I think we're going to need to move the ball quickly and smartly and forwards quickly because, as you said, Kish, they've got the fullbacks that you can spin them occasionally, but you can't give them time to recover. Because if you give them time to recover, they will get you. So we need to move the ball quickly and efficiently. And I don't think Skip can do that. And I don't think he has the necessary IQ on the ball to manipulate his body. Say someone's coming from behind him. I think Madison and Kulusevski can use their body in a way to shield the ball and manipulate the presser. And I don't think Skip has that.
The more I think about this game, I'm kind of thinking back to that first 20 minutes against Chelsea and that kind of front-footed, electric kind of style really suiting this game. I think Chelsea actually pressed really high as well that game, and I think we'll come out of the blocks flying. I really do. I think where it might shift is that like 30-minute mark where we'll tire a little bit, and I think that's happened in certain games this season, and City might gain control there. So I think scoring early might be a kind of thing that will happen, but also kind of what we're trying to be doing. I think we'll try and score early and kind of get that lead and then maybe kind of hang on, not hang on in terms of sitting back, but managing the game. But yeah, so what would you, Travis? You said you'd have this. You think there'll be this?
Yeah, just go for it. Go full throttle, foot on the gas.
Yeah. So the usual front three, Andrew, will be the predicted front three will be Vern on the left, I assume, Johnson on the right, and Richarlison up front.
I do think that the midfield three will change throughout the game. Definitely once by the 60th minute, if not twice. I think he will chop and change it depending on how the flow of the game's going. I think that's something we've got going for our midfield, especially when Bissouma and Sarr come back, in that we can manipulate it depending on game state, the opponent, how the game's looking, which is really crucial to have and something that the top teams have.
Yeah, it will be a game that lasts. That will be important to keep thinking about over the 90 minutes for Ange. And I think there's certain games where I think he'll look to kind of process it in parts, and kind of he'll want, I think, first half to get at them, and then he'll look to kind of see where we're at there and then manage the game from there. So I think let's touch on maybe a couple of weaknesses you think City have, which probably there isn't many. But Chris, what do you see us trying to? What do you see Ange kind of trying to exploit in the current City system?
You mentioned that Ederson's not playing. I think obviously he is incredible and is a big part of their build-up. And I think him not being there just, I'm not going to say they're nervous at the back because they're still supremely confident players, but not having Ederson there to kind of calm things down and be an option, or as solid an option, could invite us to, really actually put on the press like you've never seen before. Obviously, Madison asking a lot of Madison first game back because we'll be pressing a 4-4-2 shape, so he'll be joining Richarlison in the press, presumably. although maybe because he's back, maybe they won't. If Kulusevski plays, maybe he'll join Richarlison in the 4-4-2 press. But that could be something to exploit. And that would really rely on us as a unit, kind of having an understanding of when to go, like when's the moment to spring, and then which players you jump to as well. Because this is the thing, this is why I said it's a game of chicken, because you think you're going to press City and they're so good they can play through you, and suddenly if one player's sprung too early, say like Bentancur was playing as the deepest line midfielder and he goes too early, suddenly I don't know, Foden or even De Bruyne, if he's back, like they're going to pick up the ball with just the defense ahead of them, and that's a scary prospect. But I think if that's the mentality we have to go with, I think, and get the fans on side early, try and create a few chances, and hopefully score early, like you said.
I think one of the scariest sights is when City break a press and you see De Bruyne carrying, because he's such a. I think he goes unnoticed of how athletic he is and how
insane.
He can carry the ball from one kind of box to the other, and that's a scary sight. And I'm sure they will break the press a couple of times, but yeah, I agree. I think Ortega's the one who will play in goal, who's actually very good with his feet as well. But there's something about having your kind of main keeper that instills confidence and calm to the back, especially away from home. And I think the other thing is, I'm not sure on Ortega's long. I'm sure he's got kind of spraying passes on lock as well. But Ederson, there's something about also when you press City, the ability for Ederson to kind of find their winger or to turn defense to attack rapidly is also probably a miss for them. So that hopefully will benefit us. And I guess let's touch on maybe a couple of weaknesses in this 11 on our side. I think, I worry less about these games where we do get pressed and teams come out, less than I worry about games where teams sit off us. But I wanted to know kind of, Travis, what are your thoughts on the weaknesses in this side and how a game like this compares to a game where you might have Sheffield United come and park the bus?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point in terms of, I think Ange probably prefers it too, because he wants the teams to get drawn to him and he wants space to be created in behind. And I think instinctively, I dislike it when we're playing out of the back, just naturally the feelings within me, like that man behind you in the stadium screaming at you to kick it out. But I think that's a big positive for us, you said. But it is also a negative because they're so good at pressing and we're only in the early phases of this system. And, with Maddison coming back from injury, I don't know what that's going to look like fitness-wise. And I think the ball carrying of De Bruyne is a really key point that you mentioned there, and something that we need to get a hold of, because I don't think we've got that profile in midfield that can cover ground quickly and maybe sweep up like Sarr could or something like that. I think Bentancur does have the legs to do it, but especially in this midfield three, I don't think he'd have too much to cover, because you've got Foden dropping in, you've got Alvarez dropping in, you've got Bernardo there as well. I think they won't actually be running in behind too much against us, I don't think, which I don't think will serve us well. I think on one hand it's good because the centre backs can push up and stay tight, but on the other hand, it sort of negates our high line a bit, because if they're trying to get in behind our high line, that's what we want. We want them to try and get in behind it and catch them offside. So I think
Van de Ven sort of sweeps those up pretty
exactly. So whilst Romero and Van de Ven to an extent are very good at staying tight to their man and pushing up to them, I think, especially given the technical ability of the ball when they drop into those pockets of Alvarez, Foden, etc., they can turn us quite easily. And there's been a lot of moments this season where we're sort of pinned back in and around our box. And I don't mean like all our defenders back. I just mean like the back four. We can sort of get played round a bit. And we saw that against Brighton, Rashford, and Højlund at United especially. They sort of, with the short passes in and around the box, popped it around.
At the Etihad as well, there was a goal like that. I can't remember who scored it.
Exactly.
Exactly. There's a slight weakness in our back four where and I think part of this was when Davies and Emerson were playing together, which is definitely a factor because I think Romero's proactive and he sees danger and he'll go and deal with it. But there was a couple of times where the back four has been caught on kind of flat-footed and runners have run past them and managed to get a shot goal. But yeah, I agree with all of that. But yeah, I think in terms of the draw itself, I think for me, I was happy with the draw. I think it's a game where if we lose, cool, we've lost the City. That's kind of no disaster. It's at home, so kind of cup feeling night game. I think the atmosphere will be good, which can obviously sway games like this. And also, if we do get through them, we have that momentum to kind of push on in that competition, and we're not in Europe, so it's a competition we can take very seriously. And I think if we beat City, it's that confidence it instills is going to take us far in the rest of the competition. So I'm really fine with the draw. But yeah, let's kind of wrap it up and get your score predictions. Start with you, Travis. What are your kind of score predictions for this game? And how confident are you?
Well, I don't appreciate you coming to me first. I was going to base it off your guys' prediction.
No, you
Now
start.
you've put me under pressure. Okay. I think I am very confident because it's the first time in a while that we've gone into a cup game without pressure on us to an extent. And I think we need that freedom, especially the way we want to play. We need that freedom and just the ability to go at it. And I think there's an expectation because we're so good against City at home. But by the same token, it's still City at home. Like it's still Man City, and teams, even if we're expected to beat them, it's sort of like, oh, I expect us to shock them. So it's still sort of that element of we're beating the champions here. But I think the mentality going into it, the players we have back, I think the way we play sort of counteracts them quite well, and we can get them on the break. I'm just gonna say, I'll say 3-2
Okay,
to
nice.
Spurs.
Chris, what about you?
I think we're going to win as well. I do. The thing is, it's quite dependent on a few things. I think so Romero is a little bit of a concern because we need him to be proactive in this game. We need him to be on his toes. And if Bentancur does step up to the press, then Romero has to follow, which is a good thing because he's brilliant at it. But sometimes he's not. And sometimes he goes too far and he's too proactive. And if he gets an early booking, then you're just biting your nails the rest of the game. So he's got to be sensible. He's got to be, it's like, yes, be proactive, but also bear in mind that we cannot lose you in this game. So it's absolutely essential that he is slightly cautious. Also Johnson, I do like Johnson a lot, and I think he's been getting a lot of unfair criticism. But he has to make it count. He's probably going to get in behind 1, 2, maybe 3 times in this game, and so one of those times has to end in some sort of shot producing action, whether that's him taking a shot or getting a ball across. I feel much more confident in Werner's ability to create chances than Johnson's, and that's not due to their ability. It's about their self-belief. And I think if Johnson really does believe and trust himself, then he can do some serious damage. But I can't be 100% sure that'll happen. And the other thing is our fitness levels. Obviously Bentancur's quite fresh back. Maddison, it'll be his first game back. How long is he going to last? Werner's still building up his fitness. So I mean, to be fair though, we've got good reinforcements on the bench this time, which we haven't had for a while. Like there are genuine options there to bring on now the squad's kind of coming back. So that might impact the game as well. But I do think we can do it. I think if we're brave, if we're focused, Udogi's in incredible form. Like I have no doubts that he will dominate his flank. Like Porro's been tested a bit defensively recently, but he's so good on the ball, and I really trust him. Yeah, I think we can win 2-1.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Johnson. I think this game's big for him, and I have a feeling that he's going to do really well in this game. It's a game that suits his profile, and if not to put the pressure on him, but this is the kind of game he has to sort of use what he has because he's got certain attributes that suit these kind of games in terms of speed. He's got a good first time kind of ball across the box that you can flash to kind of. And I think Richarlison being in confident form will really help that because even maybe if it's slightly behind him or whatever, Richarlison is still back to convert at the moment. Yeah, I'm going to go for 2-0. I think we'll win as well. We've got a couple questions quickly before we go from the YouTube chat. So, Andrew, will you tell us what they are?
Yeah. All right.
I want Andrew's prediction quickly first.
My prediction.
Andrew.
Oh man. I think Spurs win 7-2. Five penalties from Boro and one own goal from Ake. All right. No, but in reality, I think Spurs win. I think they have what it takes. I think City's been shaky lately, and yeah, hopefully it'll be a nice Friday for me and for all of us actually. All right, questions. So we have a question from Dwade3, who's been here the whole stream, so that's pretty cool. He said, I feel like it'll be a Højbjerg, Bentancur, Madison midfield tomorrow. Skip presses way higher than Højbjerg, but they may opt for a more conservative approach in the Ange Ball context. What do you guys think? I know we loosely agreed on Madison, Bentancur, Kulusevski, but I agree that we need a bit more of a conservative approach because Kulusevski and Madison in the midfield at the same time is very experimental. So what do you guys think about maybe a more conservative option?
Yeah, I think in terms of pressing, I think the structure will remain the same. So it will be a 4-2 press, and he's barely shifted from that. I think he might have shifted against Arsenal, if I can remember.
Occasionally,
he goes for 4-5-1.
The player joining the midfielder joining the front two occasionally will drop back onto the pivot.
Yeah,
it's more of like a full
start. I think that's more of an in-game tweak that he makes.
Yeah, depends on how much freedom Rodri or Stones is getting.
In my eyes, if Madison plays, he'll be the most front player pressing, which obviously with his injury might be a bad idea, but I see that for him. In terms of how conservative the midfield might be, I agree. I think if we had our full fit team, full kind of everyone available, I wouldn't play that midfield three, but I think their kind of attacking abilities outweigh the other guys' defensive abilities, if that makes sense. I don't think Højbjerg and Skip are insane in terms of covering the ball, covering the pitch, pressing, etc. Whereas if we had a Sarr, say, then I would start Sarr. Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was just thinking about the use of the word conservative around Højbjerg, and I get it because, like, obviously his natural inclination is to sit a bit deeper and not join the attack. But I guess it's a toss up between, do you want more passing ability? Do you want to have a midfield that's going to look for more long balls? Or do you want the ball carrying through Kulusevski? Because Kulusevski's not much of a passer. He's a dribbler. He'll carry the ball forward for us in the same way that De Bruyne does for City. I mean, obviously De Bruyne is more athletic than Kulusevski, has a longer stride, but there's a definite similarity with their carrying, particularly their kind of physique and the way they hold themselves. Whereas Højbjerg will absolutely be more open to playing expansive crossfields, and that could be really useful for Werner and Johnson. So I don't necessarily think it's conservative in the sense that we'll be less attacking. I think we would be attacking in a different way.
I think that's a good point, definitely. And I'd imagine that he'll opt for legs, just because the game will, in my eyes, be quite end to end. I fear for a quite difficult to watch game in terms of nerves because I think it will be very open. And I think without Sarr, Kulusevski's, I think maybe after Sarr got the best engine in the squad. I'd say Bentancur as well has got a good engine, but I'd imagine that Kulusevski's ball carrying will be preferred, but we'll see. Andrew, any other questions we've got?
Yeah. Let's do two more. So one of them here, bit of an interesting one, a bit of a thought. I think it's a thought-provoking question. If we could take one player out of each of last year's top four. That last year that was City, Arsenal, United, and Newcastle. If you take one player from the top four to add to the squad this season to help us, who'd it be?
I like that question. All right, why don't we'll do one each. So I'll unfortunately take Arsenal. I would take from
I'm gonna cut your
Arsenal
Mm.
everything. I'd I'd probably take Saka, to be honest. I think he's got everything for a winger, so I'll leave it at that. Chris, why don't you go for City as we're playing City?
So I'm not it's like the obvious choice is like Haaland or De Bruyne, but I think in terms like just to be a bit different in terms of what we probably need for the squad, maybe Doku.
Yeah,
But I
that was
love Grealish. I
interesting.
love
Very good
Grealish
point.
as well. I
Yeah.
absolutely love Grealish. I think he's like been so underused. And we had a conversation on the Extra Inch a couple of weeks ago about like whether we could attract Grealish. And I just think like in the summer, why like if he's still not getting games, why not?
Yeah.
He'd be so good in Ange's system. He'd be unreal.
I would, like watching
Yeah.
Grealish and Madison on the same pitch would be like a
Oh,
dream.
that would be amazing. That would be brilliant.
My kind of
Yeah.
players. Yeah, I agree.
Who's
I
left?
think he's not a stylistic exact fit, but he's the kind of player you just make room for in the squad. In my,
Yeah.
in my
I can see him
eyes.
thriving as well.
I
Like
agree.
really, really enjoying it.
I think Andrew's so
Especially-
big on freedom to top players like that. He understands certain players need. I think Madison's a great example of it. The amount I think you can only give freedom to maybe two players on the pitch like that at a time, maybe. But I think he understands that certain players need like parameters to play in, and certain players need to just do what they do. And that's one of the main reasons I love Ange as a man.
And personality as well. Like he really obviously his captains that he went for, Son, Madison, and Romero are all massive personalities, and I think like Grealish just oozes like personality, a bit of arrogance, which I kind of like, swagger. He's an unusual character, and I imagine Andrew would really appreciate that about him.
I agree. Okay, Travis, why don't you do?
It's Newcastle and Liverpool left. Oh no,
Yeah.
not Liverpool.
No,
It's Newcastle and
United.
United.
Oh. Go on, you do.
United.
United. I'll take off the top of my head. I'll either take Toby Minu or Kobe Minu. I'm not sure which one, just to be a bit different because I just think he's an exceptional talent.
I agree.
Or I'll take Lisandro Martinez. I think he works well.
Okay. And then the last one's Newcastle. From Newcastle, I'd take Isak personally. I think he's my favourite non-Spurs player in the league. I think he's.
Anthony Gordon would work quite
That was
well.
the other
to
one I
be
was
fair.
going to say, which is weird because we got linked with a double deal for him and Richarlison when Richarlison came.
Yeah.
People turn their nose up a little bit, but I think he's great as well. But Isak's just, I think, unbelievable to watch.
What about Guimaraes is a 6 as well?
He's good as well.
Yeah,
He's
unreal
good.
player.
I just don't worry about our midfield that much at the moment, so I just
Yeah, that's it,
Yeah,
isn't it? We're strong.
exactly so.
All right, Andrew, we'll do one quick
Yeah,
last one.
Last question. Well, I can't guarantee it'll be quick. It's a bit more of a ponderous one. But the question is, it's from Sammy on Twitter, X, Twix, whatever you want to call it. Sammy asks, what is Ange's ceiling and how quick do we get there? Obviously, big cup match trophy has been won in X amount of years. Where's that ceiling and how quick do we get there?
Chris, I'll let you kind of answer this and leave us with that positive thoughts, positive thinking.
Hopefully positive.
Yeah, hopefully we'll see, and then we'll wrap it up. Go on.
He kind of smashes through the ceiling at every club or job he's at. At Celtic, the ceiling is you win the league and then you win the league and then you win the league and you win the league. And he didn't just win the league; he won the league in like the most incredible manner. The connection that he built between the fans and the players and the club generally is what we've seen at Spurs already in his first 6 months. So I think his ceiling is essentially winning everything. I genuinely think like if we back him, if we stick with him, if we can keep players fit now, there's no reason we can't win the league either this year or next. Like I know it sounds insane to be talking about winning the league this year, but we will finish the season so strong with the players we've got coming back. And so if anyone slips up around us, then we need to just be there to step in.
Lovely. That's a good way to round it off. Wendy, Chris, thank you so much for coming. Travis as well. Yeah, we'll be back with these. I think we'll have one next week, post or pre Brentford.
Aren't you away?
I'm away, so I won't be here. But I
do
think
post Brentford makes
post-Brentford.
probably more sense.
Yeah, and thanks everyone who watched. We've got plenty more stuff coming, threads and videos and all that kind of thing. And also go check out, I'm sure you all know, Wendy Coys on Twitter, X, and obviously the Extra Inch podcast. I can say I listen every week and take a lot of kind of knowledge and good takes from there. So it's really good stuff. If you like our stuff, you'll definitely like that. But yeah, thanks everyone and goodbye.